I never imagined that the darkest betrayal of my life would come from the two people I trusted most. One was my husband of 15 years. The other, my childhood best friend. By the time I uncovered the truth, I was already secretly earning $500,000 a year. But money couldn't shield me from heartbreak, nor could it prepare me for the storm that was about to swallow my world.
My name is Clara Dawson, a 35-year-old illustrator and children's book author. My days are usually filled with colors, sketches, and whimsical tales for little ones. But today, I'm not here to tell you a story about enchanted forests or talking animals. I'm here to tell you how my husband, Daniel, the man I once believed was my soulmate, shattered my life, and how my best friend Claire stood by his side when he did it. It all began on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Daniel walked into our kitchen with the calmness of a man asking for a cup of tea. Instead, he dropped a business card on the counter. A divorce lawyer's card. "Let's end this, Clara," he said flatly. "You don't have a stable income, and I think this is best for both of us." His words didn't just pierce, they burned. And standing a few steps behind him, wearing a smug little smile, was Claire. My Claire, the girl I had grown up with in Seabrook, Maine, our quiet coastal town. The girl who once swore we'd always have each other's backs. Now, she looked at me like a victor gazing at her prize. Back in high school, I was the quiet one, always sketching in my notebook while others laughed, gossiped, and planned their futures. Claire, on the other hand, was a star. Beautiful, magnetic, the kind of girl everyone wanted to sit with at lunch. She was my best friend, my anchor, my sister in every way that mattered. And then there was Daniel, reserved, thoughtful, the boy with kind eyes who always carried books under his arm. He and Claire were the golden pair of our small town, at least in my eyes. I assumed he had feelings for her, and why wouldn't he? She shined so much brighter than me. But one evening, just before graduation, Daniel asked me to meet him by the lighthouse overlooking the harbor. The air smelled of salt and wildflowers, and I remember tucking a strand of hair nervously behind my ear, expecting him to confess his love for Claire. Instead, he said words that changed everything. "Clara, I've liked you for years. Will you give me a chance?" I thought he was joking. My cheeks burned, my heart pounded, and for a moment, I almost asked if Claire put him up to this. But then, when I told her about it, she surprised me. "You should go for it, Clara," she said warmly, squeezing my hand. "He's a good guy. You deserve someone like him." It felt like stepping into a dream. After college, while Claire went off chasing bigger cities and glamorous opportunities, Daniel and I stayed rooted in Seabrook. At 26, we married in a small ceremony by the ocean. I wore a dress that I had designed myself, simple, with a trail of hand-painted lilies, and he whispered during our vows that I was the only person he could imagine forever with. We decided early not to have children. Freedom suited us. Daniel worked his way up to manager at a thriving real estate firm, while I poured my heart into illustration and writing. Slowly, my stories began to gain traction. We traveled, attended gallery shows, and built a life that seemed, from the outside, enviable. For years, I believed we had it all. But beneath the surface, cracks had already started to form. And those cracks widened the moment Claire returned. Claire came back into my life like a summer storm, sudden, loud, and impossible to ignore. She had just married Marcus, a rising star in the tech world, and not long after, they welcomed a daughter, Sophie. I still remember the night she announced her pregnancy. We were at my house, sipping tea by the fire, when she leaned forward with her signature grin. "Clara, guess what? You and Daniel better be ready. I'm going to need your help a lot. Marcus is always buried in work." She said it so casually, and Daniel chuckled as if the idea thrilled him. I smiled politely. but inside, a faint unease stirred. At first, it seemed harmless. Daniel would drive Claire to doctor's appointments when Marcus was away, or stop by to fix little things in her house. She leaned on him the way she used to lean on both of us in high school, except now, her requests came with a frequency that made me pause. Then small things began to change. Daniel quit smoking because Claire hated the smell. He started rearranging his schedule around her needs. He even left work early on several occasions to babysit Sophie when Marcus was traveling. "Daniel," I said one evening as he slipped on his coat, "don't you think you're crossing a line? Marcus might not appreciate how involved you are." He frowned, his voice sharp. "You're always buried in your work, Clara. Claire actually needs my help. Why can't you understand that?" His words stung more than I wanted to admit. The gentle, considerate man I married now bristled whenever I questioned him. Arguments sprouted like weeds. And little by little, I realized Daniel wasn't just helping Claire. He was orbiting her, like a planet pulled by a stronger sun. The breaking point came during Sophie's kindergarten graduation. The night before, Daniel rifled through the closet, pulling out a suit I hadn't seen him wear in years. "What's the occasion?" I asked, trying to mask my unease. "I need something formal for Sophie's graduation," he replied casually. "Claire asked me to stand in for Marcus." The words hit me like ice water. "You're going in place of her husband? Daniel, that's not just inappropriate. It's humiliating. Do you even hear yourself?" He shot me a cold look I barely recognized. "You're being ridiculous. I'm supporting a friend. Why can't you, for once, be understanding?" That was the moment I knew. My marriage was no longer mine. Daniel and Claire had crossed a line, and I was being shoved to the sidelines of my own life. But I had no idea just how far the betrayal went, or how deep it would cut. For weeks after Sophie's graduation, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Daniel's smiles were no longer for me. His excuses piled up: late meetings, client dinners, weekend showings. But each time he left, the pit in my stomach grew heavier. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself I was being paranoid. After all, Claire had been my best friend for nearly 3 decades. She wouldn't cross that line, would she? The truth came to me not through Daniel, but through Marcus. It was a rainy Thursday night when he showed up at my doorstep, soaked to the bone, and looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Clara, we need to talk," he said, his voice low and urgent. We sat in my living room, the rain drumming against the windows. Marcus pulled out his phone, his hands trembling slightly as he unlocked it. "I didn't want to believe it at first," he admitted, "but I've been tracking Claire's car for weeks." He handed me the screen. GPS data, timestamps, locations. Each pin on the map was like a blade twisting deeper into my chest. Claire's car, a hotel outside the city, and every time, Daniel's name attached to her visits. I wanted to scream, to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable. "They've been meeting there," Marcus continued, his voice cracking. "Over and over. I thought Claire was different, but it's clear now." I stared at the glowing screen, my heart shattering with each line of data. The betrayal wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was a living, breathing truth. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes hard. "We can't let them keep doing this, but we have to be smart, and we have to protect Sophie." In that moment, I realized something. Marcus and I, 2 people broken by the same betrayal, were now bound together by a shared mission. We spent the following weeks gathering evidence. Marcus adjusted his work schedule to keep tabs on Claire, while I buried myself in my illustrations, my only escape from the storm raging inside me. All the while, Daniel continued living his double life, oblivious to the fact that his lies were crumbling around him. But betrayal isn't just about secret hotel rooms. It seeps into every corner of your life. One evening, Marcus dropped Sophie off at my place so he could follow Claire. The little girl tugged on my sleeve as I tucked her in. "Miss Clara, does Mommy not love me anymore?" she whispered. Her innocent question nearly broke me. I hugged her tight, fighting back tears. "Of course your mommy loves you," I said softly, "and I'll always be here for you, no matter what." But in my heart, I knew the truth. Sophie, too, was a casualty of her mother's selfish choices. And soon, Daniel would prove that his betrayal went even deeper than I imagined. I thought betrayal was the cruelest wound a heart could endure. But life wasn't finished with me yet. It happened on a quiet morning in my studio. I was working on an illustration, a watercolor fox for a new children's book, when a wave of dizziness hit me so suddenly I collapsed to the floor. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed, and four in my arm, and the steady beep of machines surrounding me. A doctor's face appeared above mine, solemn and calm. "Mrs. Dawson," he began gently, "you have a serious condition. You'll need long-term treatment and hospitalization." The words blurred together. Illness, treatment, long-term. It felt like my entire world was folding in on itself. I called Daniel, clinging to a fragile hope that despite everything, despite Claire, he would at least show some concern for the woman he had once vowed to love. But when I told him, his response was ice. "I'll try to visit when I have time." No questions about the diagnosis. No comfort. No urgency. In the first 2 months, he came only once, and then he stopped altogether. I had been erased. Meanwhile, Daniel and Claire carried on their affair as if I no longer existed. Marcus tried his best to shield Sophie from the fallout, but even she began to notice the change. "Miss Clara," she asked one afternoon, her small hands clutching a crayon drawing she made for me, "why doesn't Mommy come home anymore?" Her words pierced deeper than my illness ever could. A child should never have to wonder if they're loved. During those endless days in the hospital, I realized I had two choices: to let betrayal and sickness consume me, or to rise and fight, not just for my health, but for my dignity. Marcus and I had gathered enough evidence to destroy Daniel and Claire, but I told him to wait. "The most important thing is Sophie," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We'll act when the time is right. Until then, we protect her." So I fought. Every sketch I drew became a weapon against despair. Every story I wrote became a reminder that I was still alive, still capable of creating beauty in the midst of chaos. Claire and Daniel thought they had erased me. But what they didn't know was that I was preparing for a return they'd never see coming. The day of reckoning came sooner than I expected. Daniel sat across from me in a polished lawyer's office, his suit crisp, his expression smug, like a man convinced he was about to win a game already decided in his favor. Claire sat beside him, arms crossed, her smile tight but triumphant. "Clara," Daniel said smoothly, as if discussing a business deal, "let's not drag this out. The divorce is best for both of us. No need to make things messy." I studied him in silence, then shifted my gaze to Claire. She looked like a victor awaiting her crown. And then I smiled, a smile so calm it wiped the satisfaction clean off both their faces. "Fine, Daniel," I said, picking up the pen. "Let's get divorced." I signed the papers without hesitation, slid them back across the table, and leaned back in my chair. He expected tears. He expected begging. He expected me to crumble. But I was already 3 steps ahead. The assets remained in my name. The house? Mine, purchased with my earnings before our marriage. The savings? Mostly mine too. My lawyer had been meticulous, building a fortress around what I had worked for. Daniel had contributed nothing of value, and for the first time, he was about to understand what it meant to be left with nothing. At first, he didn't flinch. He thought he still had Claire, still had her husband Marcus's wealth to fall back on. But Marcus had his own plans. The very next week, Claire's world began to collapse. A call came from her real estate agent. The new apartment lease she and Daniel had lined up was abruptly canceled. Legal complications, the agent explained curtly. Pending your divorce settlement. Claire stormed into my driveway days later, mascara streaking her face, her voice trembling with desperation. Clara, please, you have to help me. We were best friends once. Don't let Marcus do this to me. I met her gaze, feeling the faintest flicker of the girl I used to know. But pity has no place for traitors. Best friends don't steal husbands, I said coldly. Handle it yourself. I closed the door in her face. Meanwhile, Daniel's mask began to crack. His company launched an internal investigation into his conduct. Whispers of ethical violations echoed through the office halls, and soon, the proud manager was unemployed. The man who once stood over me with arrogance was now standing on sinking ground. And this was only the beginning. It happened slowly at first, like cracks spiderwebbing across glass. Then, all at once, everything shattered. Daniel's reputation at work collapsed beyond repair. Once the office charmer, he was now whispered about in corners, avoided in meetings, and eventually escorted out by security with a cardboard box in his arms. Years of climbing the ladder, gone in an instant. Claire's life unraveled just as brutally. Marcus filed for full custody of Sophie, armed with damning evidence of her affair. He didn't have to exaggerate. Her own recklessness spoke louder than any lawyer could. When the judge saw the pictures, the messages, the timelines, the decision was swift. Sophie stayed with Marcus. The day the ruling was announced, Claire sat frozen in the courtroom, her face pale, her lips trembling. For once, she had no words. I'll never forget the look in Daniel's eyes as he watched it all fall apart. He had gambled everything, his marriage, his daughter, his career, for Claire. And now, sitting beside her in the hallway, he realized he had lost it all. Marcus caught my eye as we exited the courthouse. His nod was subtle, but it carried volumes: respect, gratitude, and something more. From that day forward, Claire and Daniel faded into the background of the city like forgotten shadows. Rumors said they tried living together, but without Sophie, without money, and without the admiration they once fed on, their relationship rotted from the inside. I never needed to see it firsthand. Their misery wasn't my concern anymore. Revenge, I learned, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It whispered in the way Daniel flinched when he passed me on the street, reduced to a man who once thought himself untouchable. It whispered in Claire's hollow smile when she tried to convince neighbors she was doing fine, though everyone knew the truth. And it whispered every time Sophie's laughter rang out while she played in Marcus's garden, safe and loved. As for me, I healed. My illness, though serious, became manageable with treatment. My books gained more readers, and the little fox I once painted during my darkest days became the beloved mascot of a children's series. But more than success, I found peace. Daniel and Claire believed they had buried me. Instead, I rose stronger, sharper, and freer than ever before. Sometimes, when I pass the cafe where I first saw them together, I pause. Not out of pain, but out of reminder. Betrayal tried to break me, but it only carved me into something indestructible. And the greatest revenge I ever had was simply living well, while they drowned in the mess they created.